They're so obsessed with the popularity of Thomas that they have what I can only call crane-shunted Thomas to all sorts of unlikely places in order to get him into or force him into a particular story. Whether the story was written with Thomas in mind or not.
What we do here is go back. So, it's official. The Thomas and Friends reboot is a thing. Season 25 is this now. What the Wilbur Audrey was against having back in the 1970s, yeah, it's now a thing now, and it's quite frankly a slap in the face to everything he had stood for. So, this Thomas reboot, as I was watching, the initial reaction of when that first screenshot it came out, I was appalled by it. I think every Thomas fan was just like, after the disappointment of Big World Big Adventures and all of those shitty episodes and shit that came out, everyone was just like, it can't get any worse than this, right? Maybe they'll get the hint that, oh, the show's not doing well. Maybe we should go back to when it was doing well, when we actually gave a shit about the franchise. So basically, that didn't happen. What happened was they said, ooh, that Paw Patrol show and Cocomelon? Yeah, we want that one. How about that one? The problem that I have with this reboot the most is the fact that the Reverend W. Awdry, the creator of Thomas, his whole premise of creating Thomas and Friends was not to talk down to his audience. He knew his audience was primarily children, but he also knew the fact that when it came to reading his initial Railway series books, that it wasn't going to be the children reading them for bedtime stories. It was going to be the moms, the dads, the aunts, the uncles. It was going to be those people. So let me ask you this. Would you want to read your kid a book that had the same premise over and over again, retelling them the stories of fucking Itsy Bitsy Spider or fucking Cocomelon, God forbid, and things along that line? No, you don't want to do that. It's just going to be like, oh, here we go again. So he set out to create a set of books where anyone could take something from it. Both fans old and young. And he succeeded. And then when it came along to the model series TV show, it was handled with great care. And even in the initial style guides, to not make it a cartoon. And for those of you who don't know, a style guide is basically like a pamphlet that contains information about the show and the style of it, mainly sent off to merchandise manufacturers or for people who are working on the set of the show. And what do you know? One of the key things that gave the show its integrity was the fact that it wasn't a cartoon. And if you watch the trailer and you just even look at the art style, the movements of the characters, and just how wacky and zany they're trying to portray this show as, it's very clear that they're just trying to make it for the sake of keeping a small child's attention to the point where no one else could really find it enjoyable or something that was just pleasing. It's something that, anyone's just going to look at and say, yep, that's just a generic baby show. It's no different than Paw Patrol and, things like that. I guess it's going to be a lot harder nowadays to explain to people why we're Thomas fans, seeing as now that this is the show. Over time, Thomas had become more of an educational show rather than, just a morally based show. It was more about, kids have to really take something from it, really predictable plots, really dead basic stories. But, back in the hit era, the visuals were still pretty good with the models. We still had some really good gems then, I guess. But it wasn't anything compared to what had happened. Even the Sharon Miller era of Thomas and Friends, which nearly killed the franchise, isn't anything compared to this. Now, mind you, the reason the Sharon Miller era failed so heavily was because it had such a basic formula. A 3 strikes out your formula. All of the characters were very out of character. They all acted like 2-year-olds. And older fans hated it, including myself. And a lot of the younger fans were just like, Folks, this shit, man. And it nearly killed the entire franchise until Andrew Brenner came along, and what did he do? He combined the old with the new, added elements where older fans could be happy, from the Railway series and such, and made a much more laid back tone to the whole thing. And then also made it so it could appeal to children. And what do you know? Those series happen to be some of the most popular of the CGI series. The problem of why those didn't do as well was because Mattel let the show rot on PBS Kids and really didn't have any marketing for it. The only way that you could really watch these episodes was if you went on YouTube. Then after Big World Big Adventures had hit, everyone was in shambles, I'd highly recommend you watch Unlucky Tug's video talking about why Big World Big Adventures sucks, because it's a whole can of worms for a whole nother video. I'll leave a link to it in the description if you're interested. It's a long video, but I highly recommend you watch it. But then, after that had happened, everyone was just like, well, you can't really go downhill. You're already at rock bottom. But apparently we were all wrong. And the one thing that the Wilbert Audrey was against had became the norm now. Thomas is now a 2D animated baby show, A YouTube user, Turtles and Thomas, had went a lot more in depth with this in his video where, he's dressed as Joker and all that. And it was a really good video. And he pointed out the reasons that, Thomas and Friends could have worked if it was in the right hands. And I strongly agree with what he said. I'll also leave a link to that too in the description. So, once this, the initial concept art came out for it, everyone was outraged by it. No one was happy about it. And then the trailer had dropped today, and my God, the shit fest that had became was horrendous. Fans were angry, children were just like, what? Now, initially, when those concept arts that came out about Thomas and stuff like that being a 2D show, I thought it was going to be something along the lines of the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, where the initial design gets leaked and everyone is just like, what the fuck is this? This is awful. Redo it, as a kind of publicity type of stunt, and then come out with something really good. I don't think that that's going to be the case, unfortunately. I think that this is just Thomas now, and after this, it's just going to be buried into the ground. I'd like to give a big thank you to Instagram user eatmyfries_please for bringing this to my attention, and the fact that, some of the concept art is looking very similar to someone's existing OC, like even down to the eye color, the actual colorations, and the same thing has been done before by companies. Like Funko has stolen a lot of designs from FNAF 3D models and just used them for figures and such, so I wouldn't be too surprised if Mattel had actually, were just like, screw it, we'll just take this OC and no one will notice. The thing that really bothers me about this show, is the fact that if it were a spin-off show, to the point where, it was like its own separate entity from the Thomas and Friends brand, for example, like Sonic the Hedgehog had Sonic Boom, Sonic Boom had its own video games and it had its own TV show. The TV show was great, but the video games were shit. But then they were just like, oh, well, this isn't working, let's just go back to the main series. If this was a spin-off show meant to, grab little kids' attention and build them up to the actual show, that would be fucking genius. Big-brained as hell. It might cost a lot more money, but I think that would have been a worthy investment. And the crazy thing is Mattel has done this before on a much smaller scale, but they still have done it with the Talking Railway Pals animated shorts. Something that was meant to be for children, but existed along the main canon of Thomas. This could have very well been a spinoff for small children. It would have been genius. But no, they just decided, well, we're replacing everything with this now. It just kind of baffles me in the fact that you do not think kids are going to be like, well, what happened to Thomas? Why does he look like this? I mean, come on now, look at this low-riding bastard. Thomas and Friends is clearly trying to replicate things like Paw Patrol, Cocomelon, and cringy stupid stuff like that, where it's only meant to cater to the little kids. Has to have shiny metallic keys in your face saying, hey, look how wacky we are, look at us, give us attention, give us money. That is in a sense what Thomas and Friends now is, and it's just really sad to look at this point. And the thing about all of these reboots that are happening to well-beloved franchises is that people are just sick of them. Just look at all the live-action Disney movies that have been coming out. The whole Teen Titans Go ordeal, you know? A show that was well-beloved by many turned into a show that just has flashy, colorful situations, funny fart noises. Look at the minions, guys! Look at the funny minion laugh! Unfortunate as it is, it's just the way that it's going to end up being. Now, the thing that really kind of grinds my gears with it, you know, as I said, it really is a slap in the face to the Wilbert Audrey. But my problem with it is the fact that this concept was pitched to him in 1974. Think about that. It was a cartoon that was proposed in the 1970s by Andrew Lloyd Webber, and not many screenshots exist by it, but as you can see from these photos here, you know, the concept art for it is just kind of uncanny and very weird compared to what we actually got from Thomas and Friends. And of course, Wilbert Audrey, he just wasn't having this aesthetic. Nearly 50 fucking years ago, this same concept was pitched to the man who created the series, and he said,
no.
And what he said was, I don't like this because once Americans get their hands on it, this franchise is going to be vulgarized. It's going to lose its initial charm. It's going to lose what made it great. And look what happened now. It's kind of like the case when it came to the SpongeBob spin-off show. You know, when Mr. Hellenberg died, everyone was like, you know, outraged at Nickelodeon because, you know, not too long after he had died, Nickelodeon announces, hey, we're doing a SpongeBob spin-off. And that was the one thing that Hellenberg was heavily against having his series about, you know. He did not want a spin-off show of SpongeBob. But after he died, and, you know, he really has no say in it, it's just like, well, he's dead, so money. You know, it's kind of that immoral thing that corporations do. I get that the Rev W. Audrey, he's been gone since 1997, but it's still important to at least live up to his legacy, you know? Don't just look back on all of those years of hard work from him, Britt Allcraft, even Andrew Brenner, you know? Those people, you know, the people who had really cherished the franchise and saved it in a lot of instances, you know? Just looking back on all of that and just saying, fuck that, we want money. It just feels so wrong to do, you know? And I get that, oh, that's all corporations care about. But I really do believe that this franchise is just going to go completely down the fucking drain after this. There's no coming back from this unless they just stop production on it and just say, well, let's go back to doing what actually had worked. As unfortunate as it is, I do think that this is the end of the line for Thomas and Friends. Now, if there is a follow-up to this, like let's say that Mattel is just like, they have a wake-up call and they're like, hey, so we see that you guys aren't happy, so yeah, we won't do that. But I honestly don't think that that's the case, seeing as Mattel's track record. And the thing is, Mattel was finally getting their act together when it came to the merchandise lines. If you've seen those screenshots of the new Thomas and Friends Trackmaster stuff, that is a complete upgrade from the weird fucking shit show that they used to make. It's nice to see that they stopped throwing in a bunch of generic, uninteresting rolling stock with these character packs and made them a lot more interesting visually and in terms of quality too, giving them 3D faces, making them so that they have references to the classic series, you know, and it makes them just desirable pieces than just giving us generic Fisher-Price kids toys. It's something that I really wanted to commend them on. You know, it was a big step up from Monkey Thomas of all things. You know, it felt like they were trying to make Thomas not about railways. They were trying to say, trains are boring. Here, have Thomas with fucking wings and a rocket ship coming out of his asshole. You know, that's what I feel like Mattel is trying to do now. And, you know, I was going to make a whole video talking about how, well, maybe things could get better if they're releasing better merchandise now. You know, they're kind of having a wake-up call when it comes to that. But after this, I think that Thomas and Friends, you know, there's no coming back. The merchandise, it's probably going to end up being based off of this rather than, you know, the older iconic design of an E2 tank engine and whatnot. I think that all other merchandise lines are probably going to get dropped in favor of this bullcrap. Thomas and Friends is dead. You know, it's of course going to live on, like, in the fans, you know, lots of the fan projects that are being made, you know, the Unlikely Fandom movie that's coming out, it's a documentary on Thomas fans, the Magic Railroad parody movie that it came out a couple months back, you know. Things like that are what are going to keep Thomas and Friends alive, not this bullshit. People aren't going to look back and say, man, Mattel, you guys did something good. No, they're going to look back and say, wow, what fucking assholes. It really does baffle me too in the fact that they were just starting to release good merchandise for the franchise, and this stuff is literally coming out in October of 2020. It's like, so you're releasing good merchandise now, but then you're gonna end up having to switch over to this. What is your game plan here? You know, you're clearly gonna have to have merchandise because you're Mattel. You want to slap anything with anything and boom, sell it to children. So it really just confuses me of their thought process on this whole thing. But overall, I and many others are just insanely disappointed by this. You know, the gems that it came out of, you know, the Thomas and Friends CGI series, The Adventure Begins, Legends of the Lost Treasure, season 20, you know, season 17 through 20, you know, those are some gems, you know. All of those things that, you know, gave Thomas fans promise and such has just been flushed down the toilet because of corporate greed. So that's all I gotta say, fellas. Rest easy, Thomas. And I'll see you guys on the flip side. Goodbye.
I'd like to be remembered as an author who perhaps understood children, perhaps how they, in a small sense, understood perhaps how their minds work. I don't know.